You're listening to Grito Podcast Network, celebrating the culture of Chicanos and Latinos one story and voice at a time. Listen to more Grito Podcast Network shows over at mygrito.net. Connect on social, on Instagram and Facebook at Grito, the Grito Podcast Network.
Orale, Oscar here from My Grito Industries. Welcome to episode numero dos on the My Grito podcast show. I want to give a special thank you to Super Steve Flores, who was my very first guest on the first episode. And as a reminder, if you're listening to this right now, hopefully you're listening to it on Spotify, but also be aware that this show is also available on YouTube. That way you can see our pretty faces, especially the guest that I have today, which is a big guapoton. You want to make sure that you do check us out on YouTube because there's going to be some exciting things from this guest. Before I make that introduction, I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on with My Grito Industries. For starters, I mentioned this on the last episode, but we do have some great music videos that are currently out there that I want to make sure that you do check out, starting with The Rundown Creeps. The Rundown Creeps, they have their music video out there on YouTube called Big Bear. So it's not only a great music video, but they have an awesome album that came out last year under My Grito. So I want to make sure that you guys get a chance to check them out, check out the music video, and also check them out on Spotify. Also, our founding artist, 3LH. 3LH, they came out with a single recently this year, as well as their music video called Darlin'. So you want to check that out and show some support, not only to them, but also to all the other artists that are part of the My Grito industry, including the intro music that we use today, which is from our wonderful friend, Maria Sanchez. You can also follow her on Instagram on groovy_ms. Not only that, but as a reminder, we also have a podcast network. Under My Grito, you're going to be able to find West Coast Pop Lock Podcast, which Super Steve is a part of. You're going to be able to find Emo Brown, Chicano Shuffle, our newest podcast, Tragos Amargos, with comedian Jerry Garcia, and also with us again, my good friend Gil from the Mind Buzz. Gil, ¿cómo estás?
What's up, dude? How you been?
Just like a Yosabo kid having to reply to me in English. I get it. I get it. Oh, that's me too.
Always, dude. Always.
But as a reminder, the show is brought to you by Mind Buzz Media. If you're out there looking to do your own podcast show, know that you can reach out to Gil and Amber and tell them about your vision, what you want to do. They can come to you with all their equipment, audio equipment, mixers, speakers, the headphones, mics. They can go ahead and do everything for you. It's just a matter of reaching out to them and finding out their availability and what the cost is. So again, Mind Buzz Media. También, same as last time, Firme Mezcal for all you alcoholics out there. Firme Mezcal is a wonderful mezcal for many of you that are probably used to drinking tequila and you want to go ahead and level up just a little bit. You have an opportunity to try some fantastic mezcal from the folks at Firme Mezcal. Not only that, but we also have today's sponsor, No Mames. No Mames for all of you out there that are over the age of 30 without a job because there's nothing you want to do except play video games instead of finding a job. Stop working with your parents, babosos. Go get a job. No Mames. Now, let's go ahead and get started with today's guest. Today's guest, a very good friend of mine. I had an opportunity to meet him for the first time at the Cheech Marin Museum. He is the owner of Chicano Soul. He's a fantastic photographer. Also, let me go ahead and say this because he has this on his bio on Instagram. Again, Chicano Soul. Pipe rapping and photo snapping. Visionary in a 50 Chevy. Son of Los Angeles, Chicano Soul, and I'm super bad. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Mr. Arturo Meza II. Arturo, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for finding me interesting enough to be on here. I appreciate it.
Claro que sí.
And I was going to ask you about the intro music. You introduced her, but I was like, oh, who's that? I like that. So that's Maria Sanchez.
Our good friend Maria.
Really
and
good,
let's also give her that shout out because
Yes.
if it wasn't for Maria, I wouldn't have met you. If it wasn't for Maria, she actually introduced you to Gil to be a guest on the Mind Buzz.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you after we're done here, which podcast did you enjoy more, Mind Buzz or My Grito podcast? We'll find out, right, Gil?
You could tell him the truth.
I had a really
It's
good
fine.
time on the Mind Buzz. And you know, when I did the Mind Buzz, like I hadn't really done a podcast for a while, but it was really fun. Gil and Amber had a really good time. I think after the podcast, you know, episode, we hung around for like another hour at least, just shooting the breeze. So felt really comfortable. So here I am with this one. And yeah, thanks to Maria. You know, she introduced us. She introduced me to Gil and Amber. And I appreciate that. I had a really good time. So
Absolutely.
hoping to have a really good time here, so don't mess it up.
Claro que sí.
I'm just saying. Just saying.
Art, I got to tell
It's
you.
raining out there, but I'll still walk.
It's dry in here. It's dry in here. I got to tell you, Art. I mean, so my first introduction to you, we had some interactions via Instagram when Maria made the introduction, and she told me to check out your website, Chicano Soul. And I saw a lot of your photography of Los Angeles, of lowriders, of Latinos. And it moved me so much that before I met you, I became a customer. I went ahead and purchased some of your pieces because it really moved me. It was telling a story, and that's something about photography, as we're going to talk about. It's really the ability to tell you something, not just show you something, but tell you a story behind it. For those of you that can see right behind me, I have one of your photos, which is probably one of my favorite ones. Can you tell the audience a little bit about this particular piece that's right behind me?
Yeah, that's, you know, one of my favorites as well. I think a lot of people, you know, like that one. And I just did like this opening last week, and people were asking me about this image too. And so the story goes, this was taken under the 6th Street Bridge. I believe it was like December 2015. They were about to knock the bridge down in a few months or so. So this was like one of the last, supposed to be like the last cruise under the bridge, you know, before that happened. And, you know, you go to cruises, you got one car show up with their stereo bumping, right? The next car is even louder than the one that passed, than the next one, you know? So my friend David hired this trio here to show up and serenade the crowd, you know? So I had to snap that photo. I got a few, but what I really liked is what I noticed after was the Nela, you know, behind the gentleman all the way to the left. I mean, it's Northeast LA. It's not quite 6th Street Bridge, but kind of like tells you like where it is, where it's taking place. So it kind of puts that little location stamp on it.
Absolutely.
And then you've got the cars, and it's a black and white. Black and whites to me are always timeless. Can be taken like kind of like anywhere as long as they're like really like no markers, you know. So it's in my top 5, I'd say. I really like this one.
Now, when you say black and white as a photographer, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is, do you prefer taking pictures in color or in black and white?
Well, I take them in color, and then, you know, something about it will speak to me. Something about it will say, well, let's maybe change up the look a little bit. And sometimes they work better in color, right? The saturation, you know, you want the colors to pop out. You want to know what it is. Other times, something like this can be black and white. You know, recently, you know, I just did the show, and I was toying with the idea of, for the first time, printing it in color. But I was like, oh, I don't know, because, you know, I like it in black and white. Maybe it'll just stay like that. But sometimes when you look at the photo, sometimes it'll tell you can get away with black and white. It'll look even better. Absolutely. Sometimes you're like, nah, you'll lose all the colors. You lose all the information on it. Don't do it with this one.
Yeah. It is very selective, depending on the scene that you're capturing. For the longest time, I mean, I'm so used to taking pictures in color, and that's usually what I share on social media or I have in my photo album. But there's something about black and white for me. With black and white, it tells a different story. The way I always looked at it, or at least the way I would talk to my wife about it, is that when it comes to color, it gives an opportunity to show off the person's clothes, the color of their clothes, right? But with black and white, it captures the soul.
I was going to say, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But in the lowrider scene, when you have these pieces of art, especially with the painting, the pinstriping that is taking place on a lot of these vehicles, sometimes it doesn't do it justice to make it black and white. You have to show off the beauty behind the color. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, like I said, so it speaks to you. I have this one photo that I took years ago. Picture this, you know, cars are driving up the bridge. They're about to pull over to wait for the rest to go cruising. But as they're driving up the bridge, it's a 50 Chevy Fleetline and then like a 48 right behind it. When I was editing it, went to Lightroom, made it black and white. Now it looks like it was taken in the late 40s,
Yeah.
or 1950, something like that. And it looks like two cars just making a getaway. One's chasing the other up the bridge. You got the muffler, you got the exhaust coming out. And that to me tells a story. I'm a big fan of LA history. I'm a big fan of like noir films, old 40s, 50s, So if I can shoot something and kind of make it look like that, I love it. Because like I said, timeless. They could have been taken in the 50s. They could have been taken, later. I love to do that. If you can kind of like, if you have the shot, and you kind of like, you don't include, like I said, these markers, you don't have a new car passing by, kind of like kills the whole shot. You can tell this old story, and I might not be like great with words, but with photos, I can tell you. And then there are things that I don't even see. There are things in the photos that people will point out that I didn't even catch, but I kind of feel like with photography, I can tell stories, just fine,
I love the way you said that, because it does tell a wonderful story, and art in general, it's really based on the opinion of the person that's watching it, because it can mean something totally different from one person to another.
Yeah.
Photography, I commonly see it also as painters, and painters, it's a different world, because with painting, it allows somebody to construct something, right? But with photography, it discloses things. That's what you're getting out of that piece of art with photography. So I got to tell you, I mean, there was photos going back to when we first met at the Cheech Marin Museum in Riverside, which if you guys haven't had a chance to check it out, definitely go down there. Not only some beautiful photography, but also a lot of great paintings that tell some wonderful stories, good history, especially on Latino history that we should all be aware of and cherish that art. How was that experience meeting me for the first time? Was it a good one?
Honest or no? No, we had a really good time. I mean, if you remember, we went to the Mission Inn, had a drink after that, spent about an hour at least, just chopping it up. I don't really say chopping it up, but we had a good time just, shooting the breeze. It was a really good experience. I mean, I kind of felt like a docent at the museum, because I've been there a few times. I really enjoy going there. It's inspiring. I've taken my daughter. I was there with my 8-year-old Sophia. We were there on opening day, and I love taking her there. I love like exposing her to art, to the idea that she can create things, that one day one of her pieces can be there. But our meeting, I mean, we had a good time, perused the gift shop, but I think it was good to explore the art and stuff like that. But what I really appreciated was the conversation that we had afterward, just two dudes, learning about each other, getting to know each other, having a lot in common.
Yeah.
I think we had a really good time. So that's what I enjoyed more, was the convo.
Absolutely. Eso ayuda, ¿no?
Yeah.
Pero también when you're talking to somebody and you can genuinely feel like they're listening to you, and it's not just a matter of them waiting their turn for them to say what they want to say. Art, I felt that way when we were there at the museum. We were sharing each other's life experiences and giving our opinions of a lot of the wonderful art pieces that were there at the museum. I had an opportunity to talk about my label. You talked about photography, about your family. You talked about music. We talked very heavily about music. And it was a wonderful experience, which I really appreciate. And I know that I felt that I have a genuine person that I'm going to have in my life for a very, very long time.
Same, man. I appreciate that.
Gracias.
Thank you.
So, Art, for our listeners, I know you started really getting recognized as a photographer back in 2012 with lowriders, going to lowrider shows and taking pictures. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I started off with an iPod when they had little cameras on them, And I would drag the family to car show after car show. We went to, Bob's Big Boy a lot, Friday nights in Burbank. And I would take pictures, post them on Instagram, and just having fun with it. And friends would, encourage me, hey, keep going, man. These are great, And I was having fun with it, learning some editing skills and stuff like that. And my friend Santino Rivera, he's a publisher, a writer out of St. Augustine, Florida. And I had known him for a few years before that. He came out with a book called Ban This, which is an amazing book, and your readers should look it up and add it to their collection. When Tucson and Arizona was doing like the book banning, Mexican American studies and stuff, he came out with this idea and said, I'm going to get these contributors together, open like an open call for submissions, poetry, short stories, all on, Chicano literature. So he put this book out. He included 2 of my poems in the book, and I don't really write poems, but he asked, and I was like, cool, who else is, offering me, publish my poems. So he put those in there. But then about a year or 2 later, he says, I want to do another book, but now I want to do a book with your photos, and I want to center it around low writing culture. So I'm like, man, I got this book deal, this offer, like who's giving me this offer? So now it's like, well, I got to step up my camera. I got to step up, I got to do better. I got to have better files. So, but then I felt like I was saying, like, I felt like I was within my realm now. Like, okay, this is my domain. Like, I can do a good job, kind of like build myself up. And that's kind of like what my bio is for me sometimes when I don't feel like I have the motivation, or I kind of like I'm too critical of myself. I have to like remind myself, like, I'm not new to this. I've been doing this, and so he offers me this idea for low writing, 50 of my photos. Again, he does an open call for submissions, and people submit their work, and we have like, big time, names, and we have some, unknown names, but like talent, like all through that book, So as he's doing that, I meet Noel Reyes at Mi Vida, in Highland Park. Around that same time, she reaches out to me and she offers me a show, my own first solo show, 2013, and nobody was offering me shows, it's in Highland Park on York Boulevard, Art Walk, and at that same time I say, hey, my friend's, doing this open call for submissions. I don't know if that's something that's that would interest you. She submitted a poem. He accepted it, was going to put it in the book. She and I get together to do a photo shoot to go with her poem. Now I've got this friend, this guy. I'm trying to get my stuff out there before the book comes out, right? The book now is going to come out January of 2014, but I got to hustle now because now I got to get my name out there, before the book, so that maybe, when the book does come out, oh, I know this guy. I've heard of this guy before, And I just try to do show after show. Anytime I can pick up a show, get into a group show, any kind of solo show. At the same time, hit car shows to continue to shoot more. But then after a while, I didn't want to just be the lowrider guy, So I try to kind of diversify, like, try to change up what I'm shooting. I try to capture the vibe, right? The whole essence of like a show. So like if you weren't at a specific car show, either my photos are going to make you wish you were there, or you'd feel like what it was like to be there.
Yeah.
So that's one of my goals with the shots. So something like this, with like this shot, behind you, I wanted to tell a story. I wanted to tell a story of my city at my point in time when I lived in my city, but also it can tell you a different story, maybe something that you relate to. Maybe you hear the music that's playing. There's another photo that I have that I call As American as Apple Pie, where it's just dudes chilling at the top of the 6th Street Bridge. And one of the one of the most common comments that I get on that one is like, when I look at this one, I can hear war playing. I can hear the conversation. I can hear my Theos talking, and I dig that. I love that.
Yeah. Gil, if you don't mind, let's pull up on the screen his website for Chicano Soul, so we can take a look at some of these art pieces, because as American as Apple Pie, I felt the same way. I did hear the music. It did remind me of my Theos growing up, because they were a couple of them were very heavy into the lowrider scene. So I'd remember seeing them and hanging out with their cars, working on their cars. That's what that picture reminded me of. I didn't need to know those individuals to be able to relate to it, because he just told me a story, and I thought that was a wonderful piece.
Thank you.
But not only that, you also have some other pieces on there, like the one that Gil was showing in a little while ago. George Lopez.
Yeah.
That's his car.
Yeah. The cool thing about that one was I was on Twitter years ago, so, well, this is American as Apple Pie here. One thing I wanted to talk about this one was when lowriding came out, you have this, lowriding's got this negative stigma, and hot rods and stuff like that, doesn't, right? It's all American, Corvettes and stuff like that. But lowriding is always like seen negative, but it's the same thing. It's dudes who appreciate cars, who appreciate, their company, like just, talking about cars, and then that's what's going on in the photo. But, when lowriding came out, we had to really like fight back against the negative stereotypes and stuff like that.
Do you feel that lowriding right now is viewed differently, or is that scene still dealing with a lot of stigma?
I think it's still dealing with a lot of stigma. I mean, depending on like who you ask, but I do see a lot more pride, and especially like younger people, who are out there. But at the same time, I'll say, honestly, I didn't grow up, in the scene or in the culture. So I wasn't around like, for years and all that stuff. So I can't really tell you about that. But I do see, teenagers and young kids, proud to be out there. And I like that. I like to capture that. But there's always going to be negativity. There's, people, they're going to be negative with the things they don't understand.
Absolutely.
So nothing you can do about that. But the George Lopez thing, he's always been real cool with me. And it was years ago, I was on Twitter and I just threw out the idea and I said, hey, George, how about you let me shoot your fleet line? I knew he had this car, And I just threw it out on Twitter. If he replies, he replies. If he doesn't, it's all good,
Which is the green one with the Mexican flag on the top, right?
Yeah. So then he replied, and he's like, come down to my golf tournament, May 4th or whatever it was. I was like, oh, dang. So I had like 30 minutes, I brought a little stool that day, a little 3-foot, 4-foot stool. And that's the shot that I wanted. I wanted the roof, and I got it. And I ended up giving him a print of that. He's been cool. There was a photo that I have of the 6th Street Bridge, and my framer, who I've been working with since shout out to my framer, Mike and the crew at Frame Monster. I've been working with them since I started. I had no idea even about matting photos. I had no idea, and just matting them takes them up a notch, and framing them. And I work really well with Mike, and they always come through on my stuff. I get compliments on the presentation and how neat and clean they look. But Mike was the one who introduced me to George. And when I had this photo of the 6th Street Bridge, I gifted one to George. And then I think a little bit after that, when I had the, lowriding out, George was like, hey, why don't you bring a bunch of copies to my, he was at the Honda Center, And so he's like, why don't you bring 25 copies? I was going to bring like 10. He's like, no, I'll bring more than that, So he signed them. He signed 25 copies, said, bring them down, leave them at the merch table if you want. Come enjoy the show. Gave me VIP passes, I was in the green room,
Orale.
Yeah, like I think it was like 3rd row seats, dude was super cool. I didn't sell one copy that night, but I didn't care, I had a good time with the show and took all the books home back with me, and I had 25 copies. So like, I think I have one of them left. There are like 24 copies out there that are signed by George, signed by me. He's been real supportive. And then I did, so then what I did too with that shot of his, I did a set of, I did a limited edition 25-piece set. He signed the 25. I signed them. A portion of them went to the George Lopez Foundation. And I think we raised like $2,000 for that. And, one thing I learned about that was, that was the first time that I had to print, right? All 25. And this is like archival paper. It's fancier. It's more expensive. I had to print them all at one time so that I'm not wasting his time having them sign 5 at a time, right? And I didn't bet on myself, and that's one thing that I'll carry with me. I sold number 1 because I was so concerned about making the money back, selling them, not having like 25, prints on me. And so I sold away number 1, sold all of them, sold 24. I have number 25. The guy who bought it from me, he offered it back to me, whatever. But I'm like, nah, man, you keep that. Just for me now, bet on yourself.
Yeah.
Always bet on yourself. But that's one thing. But anyway, George has been quiet and don't really talk to him. But at that time, this was probably like 2015, 2016. Super cool.
No, absolutely. But that's an important lesson about not only betting on yourself, and I know it's hard sometimes with so much that's out there in the world and so much negativity, but also very, very much positivity. And I think what some of us need to be more aware of is the opportunities that are out there. We're not going to be able to capitalize them unless we're taking our shot. You have to take a bet on yourself because, like they say, I mean, for every shot that you don't take is already a missed shot.
Yeah.
But by you being a photographer, it has opened up a lot of doors for you. No?
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten to meet a lot of cool people. I was just asked the other day, like I said, I did this opening and this gentleman comes up to me and asked me if I've ever met Frank Romero, legendary Chicano artist, And I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, Frank invited me to do a show 2018. And he said, bring your portfolio, and I'm new to all this and digital, and I'm like, my portfolio is my laptop, but I did bring a few like framed pieces, whatever. I didn't know if he wanted to see what I might put in the show. I brought some framed pieces with me. So he says, you want to do a trade? I was like, yeah, when would I be able to afford one of your pieces? So yeah, I'm down for a trade, So it's like, okay, I'll take this one, this one, this one. Took 3, maybe framed 12 by 18s, not very large, good size. He comes back with a closing of Whittier Boulevard print.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, dude, I won this trade, Joined his show. His show was like a month later, in a new, gallery that I hadn't shown in before. So now I'm getting my stuff is introduced to his following, right? To his fans and all that stuff. Not only that, my daughter Sophia was probably like 2.5 at the time. So she was with me on that Saturday, one of the Saturdays that I went over there. And now she's sitting in Frank Romero's studio drawing on his notepads. And I got pictures of that, So I think what I appreciate the most is being able to not only meet fun people, cool people, artists that I admire of different types, painters, musicians, my friend Tori, great like neon artist, but I get to bring my kids along, I get to open their eyes, like I said, to the idea of, man, I can create something like this, and all my friends that, are super cool with my kids, with Sophia, especially. That's what I appreciate. Those are the doors that have opened for me that I appreciate, is being able to, bring them with me and introduce them to stuff like that, to the museums. I didn't really go to museums a lot, when I was a kid, but I try to take Sophie with me to art shows, art walks, and just to expose her to that idea that she can create,
Absolutely.
So those are the doors that have opened that I really appreciate, just the good friendships,
Good for you.
Thank you, sir.
Art, let me ask you, when it comes to your artwork, is there a particular photo that you would say, hey, that's my favorite because of the story behind it?
I think American as Apple Pie is up there. And one of the reasons why is because, so that photo, there's a gentleman in the photo wearing a white hat, right? So that photo, I used it. I was invited to do a show at MOLA in Long Beach, 2017. That photo was used. I put it into the show. This gentleman at the time, he owned a 1939. So he's there with the white hat, right? He owned a 1939 Chevy, and the museum was asking people, car owners, to bring their rides out, have them in the parking lot, and anybody who brought one would get a sneak peek at the show. Right, so he brought his car out, had it parked in the lot with everybody else. They gave them all a sneak peek. He goes in and he sees himself on the wall in the show, And I didn't know him, but he ends up like posting it on Facebook or somewhere like that, and he's excited to see himself. And to me, it's like, you guys are art. Your stories, like Cheech says, Chicano stories are American stories. And I didn't get to see his reaction, firsthand, but I did see like how excited he was, and that's, to me, that's a compliment that you And that wasn't that was a candid shot. I was walking along the other side of the bridge. I had my zoom lens. I knew the shot when I saw it, and luckily, I got it. So that's gonna be like one of my favorites. That 6th Street Bridge there. That one, and so that was the one that ended up. I did like 3 copies at first. I did like 3 prints, and again with social media, with Twitter, I threw out the idea to Eric Garcetti, who was the mayor at the time. And I said, hey, it would be cool to have one of my photos in City Hall, just seeing if it would stick, So he replied and he said, send us your best shot. I was like, oh, dang, what do I do? And at that point, and I was about to print it at Office Depot, and my framer, Mike, he was like, you can't do that. No, you gotta do this kind of print. I had never heard like G Clay prints and archival stuff. So we did that. Mike was just getting his shop going. Mike supplied a beautiful frame. The print itself was 16 by 20. The frame was 24 by 28. Big frame, and it wasn't just like one frame. It was like the mat, the trim, the frame, another bigger frame. It was a big piece. You couldn't miss it, My cousin helped me get it to City Hall. She was working like with the deputy mayor or something at the time. She got it to City Hall. About a month later, Eric Garcetti takes a picture holding it. And he's like, oh, we'd like to give a shout out to, Angelino, Art Meza for, sending this over, blah, blah. And he's like, look for it in the hallway. I was like, what does that mean? Look for it in the hallway, And so anyway, I got in touch with like the Department of Cultural Affairs, and they helped me add it to the city's fine art collection. So it was voted in, unanimously. What I appreciate about that is just like, in a city of like, 4 million, in Los Angeles, like that your name is like written down somewhere, so now that piece is in the collection. It circulates through the whole city. I can go to the Department of Cultural Affairs and I can ask them, where is it right now? And they'll tell me which city building it's in. I can go visit it if I want to, whatever. But just the fact that it's like I existed, I gave something to my city and it's there. And, the bridge is no longer there. We got the new bridge now. So that's history.
That's quite a story, Art, and a big accomplishment.
Thank you.
That another accomplishment that I wanted to bring up when I was doing a little bit of research about you, very similar to my first guest with Super Steve Flores and him being on the world famous K-Rock, of a very important radio station, especially for all of us here in Los Angeles, but so is for many of us Power 106.
Yeah.
And back in 2015, you were asked to be a part of one of their segments with Knowledge is Power. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience and what were some of the things that you were addressing during that time?
So I think, Low Riding had just come out, and Wendy Carrillo, I don't remember exactly. I'm sure she hit me up. I remember running into her at an art walk in Cypress Park. I'm not sure on the timing which happened first, but she invited me, to be on the show. And I'd listened to the show before. I think it aired like Sundays at early in the morning. I don't know if it was 6 in the morning, but it was early. Sundays early. We didn't record it at the time, but she invited me on, and I was talking about low riding. I was talking about the negative stereotypes, why it's an important book, why the voices in the book matter, and we had a really good time. Wendy and I went to high school together. She was a year behind. I didn't know her in high school, but I'd hear her on the radio. And I always thought it was real cool that, she ended up there. It was, Power 106, I'd listened to it, all throughout high school, junior high school, stuff like that. And then, to be asked to be on, that was really cool. So it was a cool experience. I was nervous, because I never want to say like the wrong thing. I don't do many interviews because I never want to come off like a know-it-all or an authority on anything like that. I think I did okay, but I had a really good time. Like, just to be on there was cool. So,
yeah. Well, I commend you for being on there and for you sharing such a great story about low riding and probably talking against the stigmas that are out there, because it's important for us to tell other people that this is a wonderful culture, that it has a lot to bring to people, especially the art or the passion that they have, not only for their vehicles, but also just for the cultura in general and for people. right? Because the many times that I've been to lowrider shows, I sense the love. I sense the love when it comes to the beauty behind the cars. I sense the love with the food,
the people
interacting, the music that's being played. Let's talk a little bit about music.
Well, before we get to there, I just wanted to add, like, that's one thing that I've experienced. You know, it used to be when I'd go to car shows, I can get in and out. You know, I'd go there, shoot, you know, and then I was out, and then I'd go home and edit, you know. But the more you go, the more you meet people, you know. You meet people, you know, and like I heard, you know, Super Steve talk about on your podcast, like, you know, you meet these people, friends become family, you know, over the years. And like people will tell me all the time, like, oh man, Sophia, she's growing. Like people that I've known before Sophia was born, you know, and now she's 8. So they've seen her. And then my older kids too, like they've seen them grow. My son has his son now, you know, they've seen me. So like, yeah, these friends, they become family, you know. My friend Larry sold a car to me, and he, you know, kind of regretted selling it to me. And he was like, oh, but I'm going to keep my word. I told you I'd sell it. But he said, you know, I'm happy that it's staying in the family. And to me, like I really felt that. I really appreciated that. I really appreciate the relationships that I've made with people, you know, because it's one thing, like, you know, like I said, if I didn't grow up in the culture, and maybe it's something that I am brown and that I don't look like out of place when I'm there, you know, but it does feel good to be like welcomed in, and, you know, you're showing the culture in a positive light. And that's what I try to do. But so yeah, I am really happy with the relationships that I've made, the friendships, you know, the friendships that become family and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and the people that are so good to my family, you know, they're so good to my daughter, you know.
That's something to definitely cherish, the right people that are in your lives for the right reason, especially the ones that are ride or die for you. That means a lot.
Yeah.
You told me about a car that you picked up from your homeboy that you currently own.
Yeah,
and they kept it in the family. Tell us about your car.
Yeah, it's a 1950 Chevy Fleetline. You know, I knew that I wanted one, you know, like that, you know. So, you know, my friend David, you know, like I said, David, who paid for the trio here, he buys and sells cars. And so I had him, you know, keeping an eye out. Larry had this one, and I ended up, you know, purchasing it. But when I got it, you know, the funny story is, like, I didn't know how to drive it.
I told him what I'm sharing with you right now.
Yeah, that's why.
And we had a moment. We had a moment because as a father to son, that's one of the connections that he had with me, the memories that he had with me in that truck. It wasn't me just having these experiences. It was him with his son. I'm sure no different than your mom had as she's helping you drive your very new car and hearing you grind the gears. It's an experience for her as well, and it's a memory that she's going to cherish.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those wonderful things. And he hasn't sold me the truck yet. I told him, cuando estás listo, I'll buy it from you. But I already told my daughters, I'm like, one of you is going to get a 77 GMC, hopefully, if all goes well. And I hope that you guys cherish it for as much as I'm cherishing it because of my dad.
Yeah, before thanks for sharing that. That's beautiful. Yeah, and that's like way better, you know, to have all those memories attached, to be sitting in that truck. That's the way to go.
Yeah.
Before this Chevy, my dad gifted me a 71 Volkswagen bus. But again, I didn't know how
Combi.
I didn't know how to drive it, you know. But
I'm seeing a pattern here.
Well, so the thing was, I mean, he wanted to sell it. When I was a kid, both my parents had Volkswagens. You know, my mom had like a notchback, like a station wagon.
Okay.
And then he had a 73, like a bus, but his was like an orange. And then, you know, so when I was a kid, he had that, broke down. Then years later, he ended up getting another bus. It was an all white one. So he had this one, but he didn't want to sell it because he didn't want anybody coming back and saying, hey man, this was this, or hey, he didn't want to deal with any of that. So he just gifted it to me. But I told him what I was going to do with it. I told him that I was going to use it as a, you know, like kind of like a down payment or a portion to take money off what I really wanted. You know, I was going to end up selling it. You know, so he was okay with that. But again, David went with me, picked it up, brought it home. Now it's home. I told my mom, hey, you want to take it out for a spin? You know, she used to drive them. Like my dad taught her how to drive stick when they were going out, early 70s. She was like, you know, and that was fun too. You know, my nieces got into the van. I'm right there riding shotgun. My mom's driving, you know, switching, you know, gears and all that stuff. And she's going back. She's like, oh man, it's like old times, you know. And she hadn't had to drive stick in so many years, or a Volkswagen, you know, to top it off. So that was fun. Ended up turning, you know, it was like a three-way thing. I sold the van to David, used that money to give to Larry, take money off the price of the Chevy. And, you know, talking about like friends to family and, you know, talking about like working on the cars and stuff. Like I'm not very knowledgeable at all. But every time I call Larry, even for something small, he always answers. He's always willing to help out. Larry's dad, Pat, is kind of like a Mr. Miyagi in a way, you know, older dude, and very knowledgeable, but very patient. He never treats me like, oh, here comes this dude again, you know. No, we'll work on stuff. I mean, I haven't been over to his place in a while, but you know, he'll teach me things. He'll kind of like he'll share stories and stuff like that. Like I appreciate these people that I've you know, crossed paths with, I've gotten to know, that I've become friends with because they're real friends, you know. So yeah, anytime I call up Larry for anything, he'll answer, he'll come over, he'll check out the car, never loses his patience, you know, and I appreciate that. So
That's a real good homeboy.
yeah.
So Art, let me ask you, we've been talking a lot about music. We've been talking a lot about cars, photography, but there's obviously a lot of synergy between the three of them because of the emotion that each of these things create. What I want to do is I want to connect two of those, low riding and music. So do you remember back in the day cruising in any particular car and what type of music you were listening to while you were cruising?
Yeah, I used to take my mom's car. My mom had a 93 Toyota Corolla. And I mean, sometimes she'd cruise with us, you know, and she was very cool. But sometimes, you know, or I'd be with my older sister in her car. She had like an 87 Honda Accord, or her friend had like a white Tercel, you know, and they always had like stereos and like the subwoofers and whole nine, you know. But we'd listen to stuff like Zapp and Roger. You know, this was like early to mid 90s, you know, high school, you know, just getting out. So you're cruising by whatever was out at the time, but a lot of old school stuff too.
Yeah.
You know, couldn't go wrong with Zapp and Roger. Some Keith Sweat.
Oh shit!
You know, like
Steaming
the
up the
bass
windows?
on, like, you know, the bass on. What's that?
Somebody was steaming up windows.
No, but just like, you know, the bass on like Right in the Wrong Way.
Yeah.
How
That's
Deep
a
Is Your
jam.
Love? Like, you know, like, you know, and then later on when he had like the Twisted and those, like, you know,
Yeah.
96 and stuff. Good music. But yeah, I mean, easily. And the funny thing is, I forgot who I was talking to about it recently, was like the Case Logic books. You know, it's one thing you had the pull-out stereo, you know, a CD player. Maybe you had like a 6-disc changer in the glove box or trunk or whatever. But before you had like the big old wallet with like 4 slots on each, and then page and then page and then page of all your, because you never knew what you wanted to listen to.
I
you
still
know?
have mine. It's here in the garage.
Yeah, you know, so you have that, and before that, you had like the whole 30 case of cassettes.
Yeah.
Because again, like you
I
didn't
still
know, or
have
the
that too.
15, you know, you didn't know what you wanted to listen to.
Right.
Like you had to be ready for it. Just pop something in, you know, some oldies and like some like Bloodstone, Rocky Padilla, you know.
That was a movie back then, especially when you were in the car with your homies or maybe taking out somebody on a date. You take out your big folder with all your CDs and you're showing off, here's my music taste, check this
Page
out.
after page after page. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the move.
Yeah.
And I would see it quite a bit in the Swami también. I would see countless people walking around with their full stereo popped out.
Yeah.
And then
Walking
after a
around.
while, then
Or
it was
just
just
the
a
face.
face. So
Yeah.
you see the face in the back pocket.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
lose
yeah.
that shit. Don't
Yeah.
sit down. You're going to break it.
Yeah.
But that was the movie back then, right?
Alpine cover or something. Yeah.
Yeah, you had your amp, the speakers, the subwoofers. I mean, it was a big deal. I mean, for me, lowriding, even when I had my Mustang, and like I said, with rockabilly and everything, I was still listening to a lot of funk. So when you said Zapp and Roger, I would listen to Zapp and Roger in the car. I would listen to Gap Band. I would listen to Brenton Wood, Etta James, and even more when I started like War and Kid Frost, Lighter Shade of Brown. That was some music that really got me fucking pumped and excited. Because those are also people that
Proper
were just
dos.
like me,
Yeah.
proper dos, right?
Yeah.
So
Mexican power.
music is it's so powerful, and what I like specifically about great cruising music is that you take a look at the generation now, and there's so many wonderful musicians that are still carrying on the tradition of soul music, and they're doing such a great job. Even if I was just to point out some of the artists that are in the My Grito label, right? We talked about Maria Sanchez, Adrian Carmine.
Maria Sanchez, she's great.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah.
Adrian Carmine, Florencia Andrada, and other people that are not on the label that definitely deserve a shout out. That are still real good.
Yeah.
Los Yesterdays, Trish Toledo, Los Altins,
I
Duran
love
Jones,
the Altins.
Sacred Souls. I mean, we're talking about some wonderful artists that are really making an impact in Chicano soul and just soul music.
Yeah.
But also something that I want to point out is even your daughter. Your daughter has already at a young age left a stamp in music.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about her projects?
Yeah. I mean, man, I'm so proud of her. She's been doing her thing easily 10 years. When the first show that I did, I mentioned 2013, I did the show at Mi Vida. Itzgali was outside, it was art walk. So she and her friends, my son might have been playing drums with her at that point. But she's always like shown up at my shows and, they'll play. I just had this opening, last Friday and she was there, So for me, that was like a full circle kind of thing. And kind of, again, like reminding me like how long I've been doing this. And, to her too, like you've been doing this, like you're not new to this stuff. Like, she played with her friends. She played like during school in like music classes and stuff like that. She posts up, like on YouTube. And I think in 2018, she was half of the group, the Lakesiders. And she wrote the music and they had this song called Parachute. And I believe, I don't know, last time I checked, I think Parachute had like 10 million views on YouTube, maybe a little bit more than that. But, when she sent me that one, it was funny because like when I heard it, man, I knew it. Like, I love music. I love lots of different kinds of music. And I think I like good music, maybe everybody thinks that. But when I heard this one, I was like, man, you got something here. Like, this is beautiful, And at the time, I was driving a Nissan Rogue, but that was me cruising to this song. She gave it, I don't know, she sent it to me on a file or something like that. And yeah, when it hit, I think it kind of, I don't want to say paved the way, but I think it inspired, this sound, that came after, And so the Lakesiders released, I think three songs. Oh no, 4 songs. They had like, I think they had 2 45s, but even after that, like that's just like a small chapter in the music that she's made and the music that she's going to make. You know what I'm saying? So like, she still sends me music, and I really appreciate it because it's like now she'll send me files and I can listen to them in the Chevy,
there you go.
and I can cruise to them and I love them. And I'm like, we got to release this. People need to hear this, So she released one recently called My Tears Are Falling. And it's like, man, I just want to see like, how can I help to get this out? So what I'm excited about is like, she's still writing. She's still doing her thing. She still has ideas after ideas, music videos, visuals that she wants to, create and show. And it's art, she's creating art. Like she's not just writing music, singing songs, but playing instruments, but she's like, this is her art form, So I get really excited about that. And it's just like, man, however I can help you, however I can like help motivate you, because sometimes I don't have the motivation. So I kind of like, kind of feed off of that. But yeah, she's got like way more like, in the chamber, like she's got some good stuff coming. So it's just like, how can I help get them out?
Well, you talking about it right now, Art, that's going to be a big help. But also for the listeners, can you share where can people find her if they want to follow her, whether it's on Instagram or on Spotify?
Yeah, for sure. They can find her on YouTube. It's Itzgali Marie, Top Tier Records. My Tears Are Falling. She's got a few videos. I think she's going to maybe redo some. She wants to, add a couple more videos to that. So yeah, they can find her on either, there you go, on YouTube there. My Tears Are Falling. That's the latest one. she's got a cover of When I Saw You. I love that one. I just, and like I said, I did this opening, had her as the special surprise guest because I wanted it to be like, if you were there, you were there. She doesn't perform often, so I wanted it to be like a good surprise. And it was beautiful because like Los Tranquilos were there, and I love these guys. They're her friends. I got to watch them play November, I think 2022. Went up there to Napoma where they're from. They were just jamming in the garage, and I'm like a fly on the wall. Like, but I get to, and that's like a perk. I don't know if it's a perk, but it's like, she's my daughter. They're her friends. I get to sit in and just watch them, and this like young talent. And but anyway, they were there, and when she came up too, like cameras came out, and and she was like doing her thing.
That's awesome.
She like, and I spoke to her about it like the next day or just a few days after, like. She felt that wave, and that's what I've been like trying to ride too. Cause like sometimes I don't always have the motivation. Sometimes I lose it. And when I lose it, it's kind of hard to get it back. But when you have it, like I just try to hold on to it, try to ride that wave and see where it takes me, and takes me to the next place. And the way she was describing like how she was feeling, like just re-energized, invigorated. And it's like, yes. Like that's what I want. And, that's how I want to feel. And so I love that for you.
It's contagious, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
But even more when it's your own child that's seeing that's experiencing that, because you want the best for them, right?
Yeah.
But that's awesome. And it's so great when the tables are turned and they're motivating you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, she was. And and she's there and she's singing. And during her in between songs, she's like, I'd like to thank my dad, Chicano Soul. And she's, man, every time she does that. She did this one concert a couple years ago, and it was a big one. You mentioned Trish Toledo; she was on the ticket. Sacred Souls were on the ticket. It was a large show, and she's up on stage and she's like, "I'd like to thank my dad, Chicano Soul." And I was at the bottom of the stage, like taking pictures and stuff. But to have that shout out, like go out through the whole show,
That's
like,
awesome.
Oh my goodness, yeah,
that's awesome. For you listeners, definitely give her a follow, check her out.
Thank you.
I know you also mentioned Los Tranquilos. They
Yes.
just recently released a single.
Yeah,
That's pretty badass.
their EP just came out.
Yes.
And so in a couple weeks, they're going to be opening for Aaron Frazier. And so to have them at this opening that we did is like incredible. It's kind of like, we got them first kind of. I mean, they've been performing. They performed at Grito's 3-year anniversary.
They did.
So you got to check them out. And it's just like, I really like their sound. I really, however I can help them, get it out there, like getting, so I don't know, maybe if you're listening here, check them out, Los Tranquilos, check them out on Instagram.
Yeah, give them a follow on Instagram, but also look them up on Spotify.
Yes,
Add
they're
them
on
to your
Spotify. They
playlist.
just released their EP on Monday. There it is right there. That's their IG. But yeah, I mean, their stuff is so good. I told them, on that little jam session, I said, when you guys get a show, let me know. I'll come up here and watch it. And the next year, I think it was like a few months later, they did a show with her and with Itzcali, and they did a show. That same show was with the Belmont Kings up in Morro Bay. I was like, say less, I'm there. And I mean, of course, because she was in the show too. But I was like, I love the drive. I'm gonna go check you guys out, and they're great, man.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's a picture from that night, and. Yeah. Chevy, he sits in with them. Yadi sits in. They were both there last Friday. Just a great, group of dudes and just super talented. Manny there. I mean, I think they're all like multi-instrumentalists. Manny's playing the keyboard at the same time, holding onto his guitar, like singing too, I like their sound.
Great music to cruise to.
Oh, for sure.
Add them to the list.
Yeah, but and there's like
playlist.
new stuff too. But then they do like, they do some like covers, like older stuff, but then newer stuff. Like they got their originals. They have a good mixture. I like them.
Yeah, when they opened up for Maria Sanchez at our 3-year anniversary at Hello Stranger in LA, they really moved the crowd. Great sound, great energy, and yeah, the covers that they did at the end was just awesome. Just great overall talented young musicians. And that's another reason that I want to give them that special shout out, because the new EP they came out with, it's great. Like I mentioned earlier, it's great cruising music, all you simply have to do is just go on Spotify, Los Tranquilos, like their music, add them to your playlist, get in your car and go for a cruise. You're not going to regret it. It's good stuff.
And I want to thank you for having them on, because I kind of feel like I told Maria, like, you got to check them out. And next thing you know, like, they're added to the thing. So I don't know if I had anything to do with that, but
you did.
But I just appreciate that, like, that you guys went out on the limb and had them on. You know, that means a lot to me. And, you know, like I said, I don't have the ear that I think I do, but I like to think I do. And these guys are it, you know.
It coming from you, especially with meeting you in person, I want to point out that means a lot. And I think just in general, for most people, especially in our cultura, the advice that you get, the word that you get from somebody that you like, that you trust, does go a long way. You believe in them. You want to support what they're doing. It's about going out there and supporting somebody else's passion, their craft, and just showing that you believe in them. I mean, even if you take a look at a lot of, like I mentioned earlier with My Grito Industries, we are a music label. We do have podcasts on the show. We do events and all these different things. But even some of the music artists that we have on the label, when we brought them on, not all of them had a huge following. A good chunk of them do, but some of them didn't. They were really trying to build something. But for my business partner and I, it was something about us not only listening to the music, but meeting the musicians in person. It gives you that good feeling and saying, you know what? I believe in you. I believe in what you're doing. Are you checking all the boxes that a music label would want to have in their artists in order to join their label? Not always. Are we as a label checking all your boxes on what you would look for in a label?
Yeah,
no,
what kind
we're
of
not.
fit what kind of fit are we going to be?
Yeah, you look for that, but a lot of our decision making is based on just us believing in somebody and giving them their shot. And when you and Maria told us about Los Tranquilos and listening to their music, that's all we needed. It's a matter of us believing in you guys, believing in these young, talented musicians. And now we hear their new EP, and it's great music. They're doing a good job.
Yeah, I've been given shots, you know, like I said, with the book, you know, with low writing. Like, who's offering me a book deal? You know, Noelle from, you know, Mi Vida, like, she gave me that first show, and we're friends, you know, like, I'll never forget that, never forget either of them, because without them, like, I wouldn't maybe be on this trajectory. Like, they just changed. Like, I went from, you know, just doing this at Friday nights, you know, just putting them up on Instagram, whatever, to actually making something out of this and having a good time and this is fun, like meeting people and just different opportunities that I get to do, to, you know, and these people took a chance on me. They didn't have to. Santino put up his own money to put that book out, you know, didn't know how I was going to do it. And there was no marketing, you know, budget, nothing. It was all grassroots. It was all on up to us to put the word out, you know, so I'll never, you know, forget that. I'll always appreciate that. And just the fact that, you know, someone sees something in you that you don't even see yourself, maybe, you know, and they're willing to put their money where their mouth is, you know, that means something to me. So however I can help, you know, of course, my own kids, or, you know, if somebody that I believe in, or somebody like maybe my kids come to me and say, like, there's something here, you know, if I can, I've been given shots, you know, so let me
Good for you.
help out, you know. Yeah.
The opportunities are there, and I would like to give a special shout out to Gil, who's sitting right next to me.
Yes.
For him taking his time, and for him believing in me when I told him, hey, I know you have Mind Buzz Media. How about you help me out in doing my own podcast for the label that I hope can benefit the musicians, can benefit the podcast, can benefit the guests in some way or fashion by them sharing their story.
Yeah, you guys have had a lot of great people on, you know, the Mind Buzz. Like, I was lucky enough to be a guest on that one, but before I did, like, I started watching like all these episodes, you know, and I really enjoy them. But yeah, a lot of, you know, musicians, some comedians, some, you know, they've had some really good episodes. And then just Gil and Amber, their chemistry, like, really funny. I asked Gil last time, when you guys going to do more episodes of the On Our Way?
They're coming soon.
I enjoy that. That's
They're
funny.
coming soon.
That's
Don't
funny
worry.
stuff.
No, it absolutely is.
Appreciate that, Art.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, he only gets the appreciation, not me?
Oh, thank you, Oscar.
Mira nomás.
Appreciate that.
See how it is. Yeah. No, I
But
had a good time too, but
yeah, no, real good time. But I like also what you were saying earlier about opportunity. I don't know if you ever heard the story about the red car Stop me if you have, but if you haven't, and for those other people out there, it's really just a story about opportunities. As an example, Art, if I was to ask you, when you get in your car and you go to a destination, and I ask you how many red cars did you see, and you say, well, I don't know, I wasn't looking for them. But if I was to tell you that I would give you $50 for every red car that you see when you're driving from point A to point B, do you think you're going to come back and tell me a certain number of red cars that you saw?
For sure, yeah.
Absolutely, right? Because you're out there looking for these
I'm
red
going to just
cars.
make up a large number. But yeah.
¿Verdad? Yeah. But the point of the story originally was that there's all these red cars that are passing us by that we're not paying attention to.
Yeah.
And what I'm referring to with these red cars is opportunities.
Yeah.
We're not looking for them. And whether it's that our eyes are not open, whether it's that we're not prepared for it, whether it's fear that we're not worthy, we have to start really believing in ourselves to take these opportunities, to take these risks. And for us, we also have to show support to our friends when they tell us about the opportunities, they tell us about the projects that they're working on, support them. Because that we don't understand how much that means to somebody when they see that support from their friends, from their family. It means a lot.
Yeah.
But also for yourself, be out there looking for these opportunities because they're out there. It's just a matter of if you're willing to take the shot to go after it. And I'll tell you, my friend, you've taken plenty of shots in your life, and you've created a wonderful brand with Chicano Soul.
Thank you.
You've taken some amazing photos that have captured not only the lowrider scene, but our cultura in a wonderful way. And I would really recommend that anybody that wants to check out your work to go to chicanosoul.com, take a look at your photography. .net.
Thank you.
Take a look at your photography.
.com was taken.
También for nosotros, we're mygrito.net, not .com. But take a look at the photos. You also have some merch on there that you're selling, which I think is great. I myself, I have my hat, I have my shirt. Soy todo pinche listo to represent Chicano Soul when I'm out there. But Art, let me ask you, any special shout outs that you want to give? And you've been giving out plenty of shout outs throughout the episode, which I hope these people do appreciate. I know I appreciate it when I'm hearing somebody out there that's giving that much love. But any special shout out that you want to give out to any one individual that you would say really made an impact in your life?
There are different people that have made, different types of impacts. One person that I think about a lot is my grandfather. He passed away about going on 18 years now. He was very quiet. So he didn't, his nickname was Chino, and his real name was Ignacio. And so we always wondered, where'd you get this nickname Chino from? You would think like Nacho. A lot of Ignacios are Nacho. But then it came out that his uncle named him Chino because he was he always reminded him of like a Chinese statue. And he grew up, he was always like that. As long as I knew my grandpa, he was always quiet, gentle, patient, and quiet, But I think about him and I hope that I'm making him proud. He made a huge impact on my life, and I wish I had more time with him. Another person is my ex-wife's grandfather. He gave me a shot, coming into the family. I was a young kid. I was probably like 19, 20, shaved head, probably like, oh, what is this kid, But same kind of guy, very smart, not as quiet. He was very funny. He was very welcoming, and I miss him. He's going on 19 years. In March, it'll be 19 years. These are the guys that I wish I still had around because they were great mentors. They had a lot of, when you're talking about your dad, and I was hoping that you were going to say they were consejos. They were like, and with my grandpa Chino, that's what it would be. He'd give these, this advice and stuff. Willie, my ex-wife's grandfather, same thing. He, like I said, I was a young kid. We had our kids young, but he was very patient and very understanding. I wish I had more time with him, because I feel like I probably would have made better decisions in my life if he was, around longer. But when I think about that, I hope to be that mentor to my son and to my daughters, and however they need me. But I think these two gentlemen, have made a huge impact in my life. My grandpa Chino was there for me at times that my dad wasn't there for me. Just I lived with my grandparents, so he taught me things and taught me how to tie a tie. I think about him every time I do. So it'd be these two gentlemen for sure.
Those sound like two outstanding men that made an impact in your life. So Art, what I want to do on every episode is I want to ask every guest 3 questions. I'm curious on how they respond to them. It's just fun questions. Starting off with question number 1, musically, if you had to, and I know it's so hard, but if you had to choose one band or musician that really means something to you, who would that be? What band or artist?
That is tough. Yeah, when I was a kid, we grew up with a lot of music playing. My parents, they're both like second, third generation. So they didn't play a lot of Spanish music in the house. My dad listened to like a lot of Joe Bataan, Tower Power, War, and my mom, a lot of Motown and stuff like that. My mom, Tina Marie, Eurythmics, Simply Red, stuff like that. But my dad, my mom bought my dad a flute when they were just going out, bought it at a pawn shop, and he was not like very great, with the flute, but he'd bring it out when he'd put on some Tower Power. So like this one song, Sparkling in the Sand, it's got like it's a very beautiful song. The lyrics, the music, everything, the way they just put this whole song together, it's beautiful. And so he'd bring the flute out. And he didn't, he wasn't like he wasn't like a lost member of the group. He wasn't that good, but he was like our hero, at least to me, when he'd play, like to me, it was like perfection. The way he would just get the flute to just sound like the record. So if I had to pick one, it'd be probably Tower Power or maybe War. I don't know. It'd be something like that. One year though, War hit me up about using one of my photos for their tour dates.
Oh shit!
And to me, that was like, like you guys are War.
That's a big deal.
They're like, hey, do you mind? I'm like, oh man, you guys are War. They're like, oh, we feel like your photo, really encapsulates, our whole vibe. I was like, dude, say less, man.
Is that a photo that's available on your website?
It might be. It's one of my older ones. It's one where it's got like 2 lowriders facing a cop car. So the cop car is like, it was parked, but it's just like 2 on 1, like, so I called it At Odds. There's always, cops and lowriders, but they really dug it. They used it for their tour dates online, gave me credit, photo by ChicanoSoul.net and, but Tower Power, different songs, like You're Still a Young Man is like a family heirloom, it just passed down from generation to generation. Those, if I had to, it'd be, it's a tough one. Los Lobos are up there too, One day, like, I'd love to shoot like an album cover for them. To me, that would be bucket list item. But yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I don't know. I gave you 3, but
nah,
should have been else. It's
No,
hard
it's
to know.
not bien.
I don't know if it's a Gemini thing or whatever. I can never choose favorites.
That's perfectly fine. Art, the next question. Between these 3, I want you to pick one and tell me what your answer is.
All right.
Favorite movie, favorite book, or a favorite app on your phone?
All right. Well, I'm going to go with a book just so it sounds like I read more. I mean, there are some apps that I use, but I need to get back into reading. But one of my favorite books, well, now they're like 2 or 3 again, but they're all similar. They're like family sagas. So you got Luis Rodriguez's Music of the Mill, Richard Vasquez's Chicano, and Victor Villaseñor's Reign of Gold. I love these books because they're family sagas that go over like 3 or 4 generations.
Yeah.
So they start off with, the main character, but then he's got a kid, then he's got a grandkid, then he's got a great grandkid, and all the things that happen and all the experiences that happen throughout the decades. What this, man has faced growing up in Mexico and during the revolution, to come over here to now what his kids and grandkids are going through in the 60s and stuff like that. And then when you have like photos that are included, like I love that because I've always loved old photos for my family where I might not even know the story. But again, you look at photos, you can kind of maybe make up your own story, but you're always curious, especially with family photos, like who was this? What was happening on that day? I love to be able to document and tell stories and to maybe to tell my own family story. So I'm always taking pictures of my kids, my grandson, you know, my daughter. They take up like half my phone, you know. But
That's awesome.
I'd love to be able to do that, and I'd love to be able to take the best photos of them or photos that they're gonna enjoy. My grandson's mom, you know, she tells me all the time, you take the best photos of him, and I appreciate that because maybe, you know, you're gonna like them, you're gonna keep looking at them. Maybe he'll enjoy them later. You know, I don't know how I got to that from the book, but that's what happens.
That's awesome. Thank you, Art. The last question has to do with something that I commonly ask a lot of my clients. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm in the insurance business. And when we talk about leaving a legacy behind, one of the questions that I ask when all is said and done, and you're no longer here, how would you like to be remembered? If they were to say, do you remember Arturo Meza II? What do you want people to remember you by?
I mean, if it's people, you know, I'd like to be remembered as a good guy, or that, you know, that I did good while I was here. But what's most important to me is what my kids think about me. You know, what maybe what their kids, you know, think about me, my grandchildren. You know, leaving that's a legacy that I work for every day. You know, that they're proud of me, that I did the most I could with the time I had, that I did the best I could with the time I had for them. When all is said and done, like I couldn't do anymore. Like I gave them everything I had. Like that's the best I could do, you know? And that's what I hope for too, because I'd hate to be old with regrets. I mean, as it is, like the older I get, yeah, I have regrets. Like I could have done this better. I could have done that, you know, when I was younger, whatever. But when all is said and done, I want to be content with the way I lived, what I taught them. I'm gonna miss the shit out of them, you know, when it's that time. But when I'm here, I enjoy them, and I hope they enjoy me. And you know, so I want them to remember me as, you know, he did everything. Like I did good by them. You know.
That was well put, Art. Art, I want to thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it. You shared a lot of wonderful stories. For all of you, as a reminder, you can go make sure that you follow Chicano Soul on Instagram. Go to their website, chicanosoul.net, where you'll be able to find a lot of Art's photography, a lot of the things that we talked about that you can purchase, as well as merch, including this photo here again. It's one of my favorites.
Thank you, sir.
So thank you for doing that.
Can I just plug one more thing?
Please, go
before
ahead.
we wrap up. I just want to say that I've got work on display with my good friend, Miss Amber Tilden, at Homegirl Cafe. It opened last Friday. The pieces will be up for about 3 months. We don't have a date when they're coming down, but today is February 7th. They'll be up for 3 months. If you're in or around the downtown area, go check them out. Homegirl Cafe. Open from like 10 to 2 p.m. I don't know, during the week. Go check them out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you. Shout out to Amber.
Amber. And then for my final comments, as I mentioned, since I am in the industry, what I wanted to do, and I always felt that it would be beneficial, is for me to share a piece of advice that has to do with insurance. Anything that can help us out in getting further along in preparation to leave a better legacy behind, not only for ourselves when we do get close to retirement, but also for our children, for charity, different things that we can do to put ourselves in a good financial position. Art shared with us a lot of stories that had to do with his grandfathers, with his children, with inheriting vehicles. Here's something that came to mind that I think would be very important for all of us to consider: the importance of having a living trust. A living trust, very similar to a will. A will is just a simple document that an attorney would have to put together that just says point blank, here's where I want my items to go to, my belongings. But a living trust gets a little bit more specific, a little bit more detailed on how your assets would be redistributed to the people that you want to distribute to this. Whether it's to your spouse, whether it's to your children, to your grandchildren, or a charity, a living trust can pretty much schedule out certain payments to make sure that, there's always going to be, as an example, children that you have your alpha children that are very good with money. They make some good decisions. And at that point, for them to receive an inheritance, as an example, from a life insurance policy for $300,000, that's something that con confianza, they can receive those monies and reinvest it wisely. And then there's the children that are not considered the alpha children that maybe are not going down the right path, have made some bad decisions. They haven't found their way yet. But at the same time, you still want them to receive an inheritance. With a living trust, you have the ability for, as an example, for those children to receive money over a 5, 10, 15, 20-year period, however you decide, to make sure that that money doesn't get burned out immediately, because the average inheritance in the U.S. gets spent in 72 days. 72 days. This is all the money, all the assets, your real estate, your investments, everything that you've built gets over your lifespan gets spent in 72 days. We got to stop that. We got to make sure that we're reinvesting into our children the appropriate way, into multiple generations, so we can really advance in this country. And a living trust is just one of simple documents that can help you accomplish that. If you don't have an attorney that you feel that you can trust, always feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to refer somebody to you. It's not something that I personally do, but for a lot of my clients, that's something that I highly recommend for them to consider. So with that, Art, muchas gracias again for being on the show. Gil, thank you as always for putting this show together for us with the Mind Buzz Media.
Oh yeah.
And again, this is Oscar and this is My Grito. Gracias.